What's up, dudes? Max here with some information about Street Fighter V that might have passed under your radar over the past couple of weeks and I didn't get a chance to talk about. And it's kind of an important one, which is going to be the absence of SAGAT right now in Street Fighter V. Of course, we all know the roster of the characters that are happening at launch, and we know the 6 additional characters that are going to be coming down the line, which we predicted and ended up being true in the long run. But beyond that, the future of DLC for this game and kind of the lack of some really critical legacy Street Fighter characters is pretty crazy within Street Fighter V. I even did a video not too long ago talking about the top 5 characters that I think need to be in Street Fighter V, and of course that list naturally contained a lot of characters that throw fireballs and are kind of like Shoto characters in some way. But at the same time, there's already a lot of that archetype kind of missing from Street Fighter V in general, because you definitely get the feel that Capcom is trying to get away, trying to take a step back from the whole, this is a spammy game. This is a game where you throw fireballs and everyone says, oh, you just spam fireballs all the time. That's all that Daigo's doing to win. And that mentality is something that has always been prevalent within every casual fan of Street Fighter ever since its inception. And they're trying to tackle that with this game by bringing more people in to take away the overall effectiveness of fireballs by giving tools to characters that have ways to deal with fireballs, even though there's not a lot of characters that end up using projectiles. And SAGAT falls perfectly into that balance, where he kind of is Shoto-like in some way, so much so where some people would actually consider him to be a Shoto-style character, which is a character with an uppercut traditionally, a fireball, and a Tatsumaki like Hurricane Kick style move. And if you consider his Tiger Knee to be that move, then he kind of is, I guess. The line of what makes a Shoto character like a not Shoto character is very vague. Well, some people even consider Shan to be a Shoto, and I completely disagree, but that's a whole nother argument for a different time, because this is specifically talking about how a lot of legacy characters that we know from Street Fighter might be going by the wayside amongst the future DLC of the game. And by future DLC, we're talking about 2017 DLC. And interestingly enough, even some Capcom guys have gone on record saying that 2017 DLC, or DLC beyond the 6 characters that we saw those silhouettes for, has not been decided and has not even been approved. That stuff is still waiting to be developed based on the initial fan feedback, reaction, and sales of Street Fighter V around its launch period. Of course, if it's initially successful, they have a really good month, of course they're going to go right into development of those characters. Of what they could be, we don't know, but I don't think characters like SAGAT and Blanka will actually be a part of them, and a lot more of the future character DLC you'll see in 2017 is probably going to be reserved at least a fourth to new characters once again, and maybe to some Street Fighter characters that you might not have seen in games like Street Fighter 4, and it might be going and pulling back from the Alpha games or Street Fighter 3 once again. But what's an interesting note is that if we look at the interview that Ono had in regards to SAGAT as a character, and he said that it's because there are too many characters that perform similarly, which we just said with them maybe not wanting to put so many Shoto-style characters, and Street Fighter 4 had a lot of them, and also that for this launch and its next update they want to have a good balance of characters. Since we didn't want to just blindly increase the number of characters, it was a bitter decision that had to be made, and they don't think it would be fair for players to not know which characters will be added, or to know which characters to practice, making it difficult to properly choose counter picks. So we decided to do it that way, which is a very interesting decision to be made. They also said that this is a very much esports point of view, which further goes into the details that this is a more esports focused game than Street Fighter ever has been. Street Fighter's always been a game that comes out and appeals to a kind of like a massive audience, and now it's so focused on the competitive element that I'm wondering what that's going to do to the game in the long run to make you want to be a professional Street Fighter player if you're just a dude that likes to jump in with roundhouse and then sweep as your combo options. Now, with all this in mind, I do think that SAGAT has a chance to be in this game, and they even goes on to say that classic characters that you like Blanka and SAGAT, do have good chances to make an appearance in Street Fighter V at some point, but it's not going to be anytime soon. And based on the way they've been revealing characters for Street Fighter V, I think one of the only ways that we can see some classic characters showing up really quick, you have to assume that Akuma is going to be in the second wave of DLC. I would almost assume that SAGAT would be in there, but based on this stuff, I don't know now. And with this information, the only way that they really could show up is if the game has good sales, but not amazing. If Street Fighter V does relatively well, and I can't even tell you what that number could be, if it does okay and they're like moderately satisfied with it enough to the point where, well, we're gonna make some more DLC and we're confirmed we're gonna add 6 more characters, like bumping up the roster to almost 30 with the second DLC pack, then at that point, yeah, I think it's a good chance that SAGAT could make it, because there might be something missing from the roster that a lot of people were asking for that people didn't purchase the game, and maybe it's some of those classic Street Fighter characters that you just did not see in the first launch of the game and its first DLC. All things considered, there's a lot of Street Fighter 3 characters, there's a lot of alpha characters, and there's a lot of stuff that some people just might not know. They might not understand like what they're from, or to get excited about them, and some of the newer characters have kind of caused a little bit of interest for Street Fighter V. Laura had most likely the biggest reaction of them all, but many of the other new characters haven't left that long-lasting spark that they would hope a new Street Fighter roster character would. So all I'm saying is that if the roster isn't initially successful towards Street Fighter V's overall like brand success, then there's a pretty good chance that like SAGAT, Akuma, Blanca, and some of the classic characters that everyone's been asking for, or a lot of people have been asking for, will make an appearance down the road. But down that road is kind of a long way away, because that's 2017. And it's going to take this full year of 2016 to get those 6 characters, you know, the Balrog, the Guile, the Ibuki, the Jury, etc., Alex and Urien. All those characters are going to come out this year, and then when 2017 drops, like I said, good chance of them making an appearance. But at the same time, that's a long way to wait, and it also kind of hurts me a little bit because potentially characters like Q and Sean and those really kooky Street Fighter 3 characters, at that point, I don't think have a very high chance. Either way, it's going to be a very interesting launch for Street Fighter V. A lot of people have a lot of variety of opinions regarding the game and its beta state. I still remain hopeful that the game will change at launch and we could get something that's actually dramatically different, because you got to assume that the Capcom guys are being very community focused about all the reception people are getting about the characters, between combos being easy, between the game feeling too easy and stuff like that. Not much of an issue for the low-core audience, the guys that are just jumping into Street Fighter, but Street Fighter V is aimed at the esports audience. It's aimed at high-level competition, and they want people to jump into Street Fighter V from Street Fighter 4, and it has to feel like a natural evolution. And if those players feel like their game still resides in Street Fighter 4, well, maybe there's something's going to happen around the launch of the game. Something could change. We don't know. We're going to find out a bit later. I'm waiting till that point because I've played so much Street Fighter V at this point that I just want the damn thing to come out so we know how it actually is. But as always, guys, thank you a ton for hanging out. Thank you for listening. This has been my whole thoughts and opinions on this ridiculous SAGAT situation regarding characters not making it into Street Fighter V and the different ways it could potentially happen within the 2017 DLC. As always, dudes, thanks a ton for hanging out, and I'll be back with more Street Fighter V information as soon as possible. My name is Max, and I'll see you next time.